Sunrise Sonata, Part 1. Springtime was an auspicious time for Sunset Simmer and her friends. For Applejack especially, it was a time of increased farm work before and after school. And for Fluttershy, he had additional hours at the animal shelter. Pinkie Pie's workload at Sugar Cube Corner increased as a flurry of birthday requests threatened to overflow the cake's online timetable. Rarity's family shop braced itself for the influx of spring fashion attire. Even Rainbow Dash found an excuse to stop napping throughout the day, as an application slot for the Wonderful Academy reared itself for attendance in the summer. Sunset Simmer found herself in the unavailable position of being pulled in multiple directions to help with any or all of these activities, with Sonata literally throwing in her support for when she wasn't gluing herself to an easel. Literally in one case. Luckily, old Mr. Fairy from across the wall had a spare can of adhesive solvent, but Sonata's ponytail took weeks to grow back. "Oh, look," Sunset said, stepping around the third painting with some mail in hand. "There's going to be an art exhibition in the City Gallery in the summer. They want local artists to apply." Sonata mumbled vaguely, plainly not listening. Stuck at the end of a paintbrush, she contemplated the canvas in front of her, while splashing spots of paint over her work clothes and newspaper coating the floor. "It's lacking something," she muttered through the bristles. "A little pink, maybe?" Sunset offered, pointing out the clouds. "It's a sunrise, after all. Anyway." Sunset sat down, going through the rest of the mail. "Do you have any plans for today?" "Gotta go work at 10, Sonata said, now with spots of pink on her cheek. "Why? Did you want to do something?" "Nothing in particular. I promised Rainbow Dash that I'd help her with the Wonderful admissions." She frowned at the small pile of mail she was rifling through. "I think the postman forgot some of our mail again." "I was expecting a letter from Adagio soon," Sonata said, rubbing her chin, smiling a stream of navy blue up her neck. "And I sent her a reply a few weeks ago." "She's probably really busy," Sunset said consolingly. "From all I've read, Apple is a bit of a cutthroat city, with all those pop idols fighting for popularity." "I hope she's okay," Sonata said quietly. "Oh, come on," Sunset scoffed. "It's Adagio. If anything, you should be worrying about everyone else being okay." This seemed to cheer Sonata up. She grinned and waved an unintentional arc of orange across her overalls. "You know, it's 9:15, all right, and I don't think they'll let you wear the suit if you're covered in paint." Sonata looked at herself and grinned sheepishly. "Yeah, sometimes I don't always know what goes on around me." Sunset resisted the urge to jump on that one as Sonata skipped merrily to the bathroom. Deciding that she would get a head start on Rainbow Dash's application herself, she hobbled around the paintings and over to the shelf of her laptop, intending to do some research beforehand. As she turned around to set it on the coffee table, she saw the painting that Sonata had been drawing and found herself staring at it. To be sure, there was a rather bit of exaggeration in the painting. The colors were a bit more primary, a little too bright for a winter day, as it was supposed to be showing, or otherwise it was almost an exact reconstruction of the scene he witnessed on Applestrudel's farm during that early morning. But Sonata's whimsical way, it seems to be given a dazzling brightness, not associated with the color though, as though she had somehow managed to breathe hope into the paint. Her contemplation of the painting was rudely interrupted by the sound of Sonata singing in the shower. As always, her singing sounded like a sick parrot trying to shriek out the lyrics to a heavy metal song. Sticking her earbuds and turning on to favorite playlists, she proceeded to enact a ritual to gain her access to the font of all human knowledge. "Thank you, Google," Sunset strummed to herself. "Wonderful Academy." You know, I tried doing that joke about what a person snoring or badly singing sounds like. And my riffers thought I was being facetious, or I had a character being, overly painful towards them. You can't make fun of yourself, you know. As she sat reading, she moved her mouse to scroll down the page. When the mouse hit something on the coffee table, Sonata's sketch pad. Sunset paused, looking at the sketch pad with a burning feeling of mild curiosity. She picked up the pad, which held within a plastic folder, looked at it furtively. Preparing the bathroom door to make Sonata wasn't coming, she opened the pad quickly. Inside the plastic folder had a zip pocket on the left, and an elastic strap holding the pad itself in place across its spine. She flipped through a few pages, smiling at massive little comics and sketches. One of Rarity and Applejack and giant robots, mid-battle. Another one of Pinkie with superpowers. Another one of Twilight singing in an open-air concert. Sunset raised his eyebrows at that one. Impressed Sonata remembered so well what Twilight looked like. She got to the end, however, and realized someone was missing. Herself. Not a single sketch, drawing, painting, or commentary anywhere in it. Sunset frowned slightly, feeling a little hurt as she were honest with herself. Then the sour switched off and she closed the folder hurriedly. When Sonata exited the bathroom, drying her hair on a pink towel, she found Sunset staring at her laptop. She sat next to her and leaned over her shoulder. "What you doing?" "Reading the news," Sunset answered. "Well, that's boring," Sonata pouted. "Maybe to you," Sunset smirked. Sonata giggled, crossing her legs and rocking back and forth like a caged animal. "I don't want to work today," she said, running her hands through her hair. Sunset looked at her askance. "Feeling sick?" she asked. "No, I just don't want to go today." "Well, don't say that when you call in," Sunset snickered. "They'll see right through that." Sonata looked at her, face glowing. "You don't mind if I stay home?" "Sonata, I'm not your mom," she laughed, patting her cobalt hair. "If you want to take a day off of work, do it. It's not like you ever had a sick day before now." "You're right," Sonata muttered, looking worried. "You don't think I'm overdue for one, do you?" "Way overdue," Sunset grinned, passing her the phone. "Go on, but you try not to let your boss see you." "Don't worry, I got the urge to paint in me. On a side note, do we still have those frozen taquitos?" "We should have plenty," Sunset said, giving her an narrow look. "And it's going to stay that way, you got me?" Sonata scrunched up her mouth, as though she tasted something sour. "Thought you said you weren't my mom." "I'm your roommate, so leave me some." She picked up her laptop and shoved it into the backpack. "I found it home today, okay?" Rainbow Dash's house was the tallest building on the east side of the city. Though the chemical-like transformation of the metropolis' infrastructure, the east side had been built on the side of a series of mountains where the city had been founded. Grown old, demolished, rebuilt, it was beginning to decay again. Nonetheless, it held some of the former grandeur of its builders' original intent, whilst remaining cheap in the current economy. Today, the mountains were wreathed in clouds, as though they were the base of a castle in the sky. Taking the bus to the base of the mountains, Sunset climbed in a winding little road that led up to Rainbow's house, hugging herself close against the biting spring wind. "Oh, hey there!" came a voice from above. Looking up a steep ledge of grass, Sunset gained an uncomfortable view of the underside of Rainbow Dash's sports swords. Averting her eyes, he proceeded up the driveway. "Hi, Rainbow," Say called back. "Aren't you cold?" You get used to it," Rainbow replied, balancing a football at her foot. "Fancy a quick game?" "Not now, thanks," Sunset said politely. Her hassle feelings were a little more condescending. Something along the lines says, "Much as I'd love to give you the chance to show off for a bit, we actually have important work to do. We should get started on your application." "That's what Dad says," Rainbow said, kicking the football into her hands and looking crestfallen. "Well, let's get it over with." The inside of Rainbow's house was, to be blunt, unsurprising. Like his daughter, Rainbow's father seemed to have been a huge sports fanatic. The living room was plastered with sports memorabilia, mostly featuring the Collydale Wanderers. Rainbow's room on the third floor was similarly decorated. It featured a great deal more posters and artifacts of the Wonderbolts, an Airedale Devil team Rainbow was quite infatuated with, and one of the premier stunt teams in the Air Force. On one wall, enclosed in glass case, was a pair of goggles with a squiggly signature and a black strip on the strap. The room wasn't unclean, but heavily disorganized and overflowing with exercise equipment. Sunset blinked in surprise when, in and amongst all this, they saw a small row of books on the shelf, but she recognized the name on the spines and smiled. "You excited about the art exhibition?" Sunset asked, trying not to smile. "Art exhibition?" Rainbow repeated, not sounding interested. "Why do they care about that?" she asked, as though wondering why Sunset would ask. "Well, it's not just an art exhibition, to be fair. It's a cultural fair. A lot of people are going to be there." Then she went in for the cleanser, the concentration killer. She waited until Rainbow was in a compromised position, throwing her football and basketball hoop on the back of the door, and said, "AK Yearly's gonna be there." Rainbow twitched, throwing the ball off the target and struck the wall, bounced off, and sailed over Sunset's head into a laundry basket. "Seriously?" Rainbow demanded, grabbing Sunset by the shoulders. "That moment you realized Rainbow Dash would actually be a fan of Macross?" "You're not jerking me around here. A.K. Yearling, the great Yearling, author of the Daring Do books and owner of all the related franchises?" "Yeah, that A.K. Yearling," Sunset said, smirking. "The fair invited a number of famous people born in the city, and A.K. Yearling lived here when she was a girl, although I think she lives somewhere tropical at the moment." Sunset's plan here was to get Rainbow so worked up so he eventually burned out. All like this, he could avoid all the visiting, whining, and complaining that always happened when Rainbow was called upon to sit still for 2 seconds. So he waited patiently as Rainbow looked to her computer and started looking up articles, barely having time to read one before skipping to the next. Admittedly, Sunset's plan took a little longer than he thought to work. Rainbow crept up a constant stream of fangirling into the afternoon. As they sat eating sandwiches that Rainbow's father brought them, however, Sunset raised the issue of the application. Right, Rainbow said, as he scarfed the last of her sandwich, cracked her knuckles loudly, and raised her fingers like a composer directing an orchestra over a keyboard. Dizzy paused. So, what do we do? Sunset patiently directed her to the Wonderful Academy homepage, into the application page. There, Rainbow seemed capable enough to visit herself, occasionally directing an odd question that Sunset was able to answer. The only problem came near to the end. What's this mean? Rainbow asked, leaning close to the screen. Sunset leaned in close, too. Well, she began, running a finger down the list. You have to write a prospectus, a short description of why it is you want to join, and why you think you're qualified for it. Basically waiting for Rainbow to finish both things, she went on. You also have to take a written and practical exam. Rainbow frowned. A written exam? She asked uncertainly. Yeah, Sunset said slowly. You did know that, didn't you? It was in the leaflet you were given at school. Oh yeah, she said breezily. Yeah, written test, practical exam, got it. Sunset gave a sharp stare. You have studied for it, right? She asked, guessing the answer. Rainbow's mouth performed a quick series of movements, shifting the lips this way and that, opening and then closing and biting down her lip. Not exactly, she admitted, giving Sunset a winning smile. Sunset's mouth tightened as he tried to stop from sighing. Right, she said in a rallying tone. Well, let's just see what the next test day is. Oh dear, she said in one breath, running the mouse over a small box, expanded the timetable. According to this, the next one's tomorrow. In Baltimore? Rainbow shrieked. That's so far away! Just a train ride away, really. But that's hardly the point. What's the next one? Rainbow asked furiously. 2 months from now, apparently. That's no good. Deadline's over by then. It took a little time to calm Rainbow down. Eventually, after reminding her she basically had the practical exam down, all she had to do was learn a little history. Primarily, the test was about military history. Her second history, Rainbow said in a muffled voice as her face planted on the desk. Sunset hummed. Is this a bit of reading? And I know you can read. Rainbow turned her head around to her desk to bestow an evil eye upon Sunset Simmer. She rose from the desk like a Frankenstein's monster. Glared at Sunset as though she had just uttered the single, most repulsively disgusting thing that anyone had ever dared to utter. Did you just compare Dairy Do to history? She asked in a tone that suggested Sunset had best consider her answer with great care before speaking it. Sunset gulped, leaning back away from the stare. Well, she cleared her throat. What I mean is to say is, you can find a history book of the Wonderbolts that relates to their history in story-like form. That'd make a format you're more comfortable with. I guess, Rainbow said in a considering tone. But still could be nothing like Dairy Do, she said petulantly. No, Sunset agreed, but it'll be exciting in its own way. Does he have a book on the subject? She looked around the wonderful memorabilia, from the giant wall sticker of Soren to the collectible figurines arranged appropriately on the shelf. No, actually, Rainbow mumbled, blushing a little. I need a sticker collection, though, she said more spiritedly, holding up a paperback filled with collectible stickers. Sunset gave it a narrow look and then flipped through it. All modern stuff. You'll never learn what you need from it, she said. It had been obvious, of course, but she didn't think a brutal honesty was the best policy right now. I'm doomed, Rainbow intoned, slamming her forehead and back on the desk. Oh, come on. All we have to do is get to the library. I know for a fact you have a child's history of the Wonderbolts in the sports section. Child's history? Rainbow asked, offended. Come on, it has pictures and everything. It'll tell you essentially what you need to know. With Rainbow Dash in tone, Sunset walked a half mile to the library of Rainbow's dad's house. Announced herself with a permanent scowl of annoyance plastered across her face the entire time, offending the librarian tried to wish her a good day. So, Rainbow said moodily, I just read this thing, right? She held to the brightly colored book, as though it was a disease. A flashy picture of the Wonderbolts in one front, surrounded by little cartoon figures that showed the most famous members from across the generations. Study it. Sunset corrected. You have to take in what it says. I flipped through it. It should tell you what you need to know. The test isn't meant to be too hard. Rainbow's face darkened a little further. Sunset guessed he caught the implication that he had to study for something that was apparently common knowledge. Which had to be put in a kid's history book to read about. Sunset honestly hadn't meant to convey that, but all the same. As they stood at the bus stop, Rainbow dashed sitting on the bench and frowning at the book. Sunset's mind floated home to her apartment. She rather wondered if she still wanted taquitos for dinner tonight. Then she saw Sonata, standing in her artist's overalls, face splattered with paint, and found herself grinning. The ideal Sonata in her head had looked at her and gave her a cheeky smile, then went back to painting. Turning to dream around her head, she saw the painting herself. Two figures standing on a rooftop, arm in arm, staring into the sunset. A hiss of brakes made Sunset jump, and her dating broke. It was going to involve Sunset slowly taking off Sonata's overalls and POW! No! Don't make her, I see bringing little slugger. Oh no, not him. He always pops up whenever I read a sad fic. Hey, thanks for all the help, Rainbow said earnestly. I really appreciate it, you know. Yeah, Sunset smiled, her face flushed guiltily. If you like, I could come to Baltimore with you tomorrow. You would? Dude, you're the best. Sunset wasn't sure about being called a dude, but she let the comment pass. Wearing her rainbow, she mounted on the steps of the bus, watching the multicolored hair out of sight around a corner. Sunset closed down front. She leaned her head against the window, feeling the vibrations of the bus. Mind drifted to a painting, a happy Sonata greeting her to look at it. The two figures of the sunset, intertwined by their arms, a maid of red and yellow hair intermingling with a long ponytail, she blew about in the frozen wind. There's her step! Sunset tilted awake. She looked out the window and saw the daylight fading fast. She looked forward. She saw the familiar face of the bus driver looking back at her inquiry. Your step, I think, he said, smiling. Yes, Sunset yelled, jumping up. Thanks. She chuckled nervously as she exited the bus. Hitting her laptop bag more securely onto her shoulder, she briskly forward towards across the passage to her apartment. When she made it to her door, she knocked, expecting to hear the sound of light feet coming from within to open for her usual. Happily anticipating Sonata's smiling face upon the door opening, getting a little disconcerted when she didn't hear anything. She knocked again. Still no reply came. She frowned. Maybe she went out. She might have reason for her own key. Inside, she found the apartment dark in the dim twilight, filtering through the small windows. Looking the light on, first thing occurred to her, all three easels were still standing, all paints still at the ready. Maybe she was letting it dry, Sunset thought to herself. But there was something even stranger as he went down to put down her laptop bag. The paint palette was still out, along with her water pot and brushes. The paint on the palette, along with the brush bristles, had dried and hardened. Strange. Airheaded till Sonata could be, she didn't leave her paints and brushes out like this. This wasn't her. Where is she? Sunset wondered, starting to feel a little afraid now. She peered to the kitchen. Nothing. She knocked on the bathroom door and looked inside there, too. Nothing. Then she went to the bedroom. Sonata! She guessed relief. For goodness sake, when you didn't open the door when I... Sonata? Sunset hesitated. Sonata was standing in the dark of the bedroom, guided faintly by the last light filtering between bedroom curtains. Back was the door as she wasn't moving. A faint humming sound came from her. When Sunset realized the second light was coming from the phone, Sonata was holding closely to her ear. Sonata? Sunset asked quietly. Somebody in the room still no response. The phone was on, but the line was dead. Carefully, Sunset moved around to Sonata and faced her, and felt her insides curl up. Sonata's eyes were blank and staring, gazing off into nothingness. Her face was pale and drawn, shining flecks on her cheeks when she heard tears falling and dried. She didn't seem to register Sunset at all. Sonata? Sunset asked, keeping a concern on her face. She touched her arm to rouse her. Sonata gave a little jump. Her eyes wobbled in sockets, still trying to focus on her. Son? She stammered, barely more than a whisper. Sloan slipped from her loose grip and bounced across the floor. Flung her arms around Sunset's middle, began crying unrestrainedly to Sunset's chest. Taking off guard and unable to hold both their weights, Sunset lowered in a control store and collapsed to her knees. Sonata still bawling into her jacket. What happened? Sunset gasped, taken entirely by surprise. Sonata tried to control her crying enough to speak. Sunset held onto her reassuringly and made practically noises to calm her down. Who was on the phone? She asked, trying to help Sonata to her bearings. Atasio, she sobbed thickly. Secretly, she let go of Sunset, sat stiffly and sobbing while Sunset passed her box of tissues from the dresser. Blowing her nose, she looked at Sunset through streaming eyes. Adagio, Sunset said, trying to smile. So she called today, then. She tried to make it sound like this was a good thing, but Sonata only began sobbing harder again. She called because... She called because of Arya. Oh, Sunset said, surprised. Did you find her? Sonata shook her head, blowing her nose again. She's in Baltimore. Sunset nodded understandingly. She tried to figure out why this was a bad thing. I was reducing Sonata to a state she had seen her in since, well, since he found her on the roof. So she's in Baltimore, Sunset said kindly. Well, I can understand if Dazio didn't see her, being in Applewood. Baltimore is on the other side of the... She's in the hospital! Sunset said, eyes went cold. Hospital? She said haughtily. Nodded tremendously. She's been stabbed.